In my last video, I had just crossed the Klondike River to end my 600-mile drive on the unforgiving rock and mud of the Dempster Highway. Rubber finally caressed pavement again as the Klondike Highway carried me west. Next stop, Dawson City. Dawson is famous as the heart of the Great Klondike Gold Rush. However, my trailer was not covered in gold, but in mud. After enduring a long lineup at the car wash, it was a little cleaner, but a new problem emerged. My dishpan water was now hard as a rock. The freeze had started. I'm sure everybody knows I'm quite comfortable with camping in the cold and in the winter time, but I just wimped out. I am in an RV park with an electrical hookup, and the reason being is simple. It is now below freezing at night in the Yukon, and in the day, it's just got up to 4 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but most of the time it's just hovering above freezing during the day. I can use the propane stove, but I don't like it. It's noisy, it burns up a lot of propane, and I just have to keep filling it up. I'd rather not do that. What I've done is I go into an RV park, so I've got electrical hookup, and then I can use a small space heater. This one's about 1500 watts, and it's not that bad. Let me just put it on. Low setting, that's okay. But the high setting, it's not any louder. I can deal with that at night. It's dry heat, and that way I can at least keep my trailer warm. It's hard working with gloves on your laptop, although I can always put a coat on and gloves and a hat. I've been doing that actually for the last few weeks because I don't think I've ever seen it above 10 Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of the time it's been cool and wet. So I need a break. That way I can feel a little bit better, I can be more inspired and do some better videos rather than just ones telling you how cold I am. Enough of that already. It's nice to see that Dawson City still has a lot of the Gold Rush feeling left in its tattered remains and gaudy restorations. The buildings tell a story better than I can, of endurance, hardship, lust, prosperity, and decay as the glory years passed so quickly, and the present also has challenges. But in September, the gold returns in all its brilliance as the aspen and birch light up the horizon. The view from the Midnight Dome is jaw-dropping this time of year. That's the Yukon River winding its way down from the Pacific Mountains. To the east is the Klondike River and its famous tributaries. It's here that most of the richest gold-bearing land on Earth was once located. Although I wasn't exactly smitten with gold fever, I thought I'd at least check out the area for its historic significance. Now at first glance, this probably looks like a natural lake, the birch and the trembling aspen in complete harmony with its banks. But looks are deceiving, as these are actually dredging ponds left by over a century of scarring the land for a little pay dirt. But way before the big machines tore away the hills, humble folks with fierce determination and rusty gold pans trudged through the bogs and rivers looking for a glimmer of hope. One such outdoorsman was named George Carmack. George was more interested in the native culture than wealth, and was fishing with his two indigenous friends Skookum Jim and Dawson Charlie when a tip was given of a possible gold prospect upstream. And on August 17, 1896, he dipped his pan into a small creek and a 1/4 ounce of gold dust shone back. The gold rush had begun. Well, if nothing else, I think it would be an insult to Dawson City tourism if I didn't pan for gold myself. Bonanza Creek, the Klondike, this is where it all began. Here's my gold pan. Oh, that's hard. That is rock hard. Okay. I think I'm panning clay, but I guess that doesn't matter. I hear a noise. Oh, that water is cold. See the ice? Okay, I'm not good at this. Oh my God, that's cold. Yeah, that's just clay. It's yellow. Does that count? It sure appeared like there was a sparkle in that sand. Well, it's got a little bit of a glimmer to it, but it's not really what I'm here for. It was fun. My hands are cold. These things are ice cold, by the way. So if it's gold, more power to the next person. I'm going for a trail. A raven led me up a dirt road to the King Solomon Dome. Here you can see valleys and creeks radiating in every direction, with the Ogilvy Mountains lurking in the distance. Yet nature's beauty wasn't my only interest in this region, as I was also on a mission for an adventure of a different sort, and it lay on the opposite bank of the Yukon River. Like a century before, it could only be reached by one method of transportation: a boat. The Dawson Ferry across the Yukon runs all hours until freeze-up and is free of charge. You know, I usually bring my best hiking boots on a trail, but this one's different. It's a rubber booter. While snaking along the edge of the shore, I was on the lookout for signs of a few ghosts of the past. After a short walk from a campsite, they started to appear. This is what's known as the Paddle Wheel Graveyard, where nautical relics of the Gold Rush era were cast aside and left to rot. Either damaged or just no longer deemed useful, these workhorses were laid down in the bogs to endure the painfully slow process of decomposition. These are the remains of the Julia B, built in 1908 and laid to rest in 1924. The paddles are gone, but the stern wheel axle and supports remain. A look forward from the stern shows its wooden port side has collapsed, but the rear deck is still intact. Almost hidden by the Julia B's debris is another wood sternwheeler. But further in is a third ship, and from the stern point of view, perhaps the most impressive. Now just a trellis for a berry bush, but these wheels were once thundering and crashing through the waters between Whitehorse and Dawson City. They belonged to the Schwatka, built in 1898 and forced into retirement in 1917. I gotta say, finding an old wreck paddle wheel with the wheels still intact, or at least a skeleton of them remaining, is so cool, because that's the icon of the Klondike to me. The Paddlewheelers, the saloons, the gold, and the whiskey. But there was more to discover as I passed the starboard side through the bushes. Viewed from above, all three ships were just a mass of tangled wood, little to distinguish one vessel from another. But underneath, there were a few cracks and caverns that allowed me to have a peek into the bowels of the engine room. Some, however, were a little bit more risky than others. I certainly would have felt safer with a helmet and work boots at this point. Well, if you ignore the lowlife who defaced it, you can just make out the ship's name. Seattle 3. Not much left of the paint. It's crumbling. The Seattle 3 arrived in Dawson City at the peak of the gold rush in 1898, but fell silent in 1922. While hard to read with the naked eye, with a little enhancement, the name Julia B is revealed. It's the stack of the Seattle 3 you see from the shore, as it is now leaning over the Julia B, embracing her like an old friend as gravity wins its fight. The first 3 paddle wheels were easy to find, but a little swamping was needed to find the second, deeper graveyard. When they said there was bushwhacking involved to get to these wrecks, they weren't kidding. Whoa. Deep in the muskeg is the steel hull of the Tyrell, its sturdy sides holding up well to the elements. Built in 1898, it was decommissioned in 1932, the ship with the longest lifespan of this mud cemetery. The name Tyrrell is a familiar one, as Joseph Burr Tyrrell was also a famous Canadian explorer and geologist who just happened to have a big part in the Yukon Gold Rush. I intended to stop filming here, but on a whim made a wild dash between the hulls. One last bit of trivia. The Tyrrell is the only ship in the graveyard that is mentioned in Pierre Berton's definitive book, Klondike. Apparently to avoid Dawson's strict liquor laws on Sundays, 100 gamblers and dance hall girls boarded the Tyrrell in the summer of 1898 to party on the U.S. side of the Yukon River. The whole town cheered when they arrived back a little weary. Although I couldn't get below deck, my camera could. When it wasn't the life of the party, the Tyrrell was just a cargo ship. The Victorian is little more than a skeleton these days, Born in 1898 but broken up in 1912. As I fought my way past the bow of the Victorian, I found one final ghost arising from the mossy soil. The Mary F. Graff left the Port Townsend dock near Seattle in 1898, but was damaged beyond repair after only 6 years. Its boiler seems almost new compared to the destruction all around it. A naked capstan, which long ago lost its cables to pull and its bars to turn, stands perched precariously over its sunken deck. What a thrill it must have been to stand on this very spot as she sailed into Dawson City over 120 years ago, greeted warmly by the bustling crowds. The era of the sternwheelers is long gone, and soon what remains of these ghost ships will also disappear, until all that's left are a few old memories and a little imagination. Amazing. Ships still fight the Yukon currents, but these days the cargo is automobiles, ferrying tourists and locals across the big river. Which is exactly what I'm doing as I head back to camp. My curiosity of the past fulfilled, I had one last question about the present. I'm in front of the Dawson City General Store, and there's just one question that's been haunting me, and I'm sure a lot of my viewers can understand this. It's not about gold or saloons, but there's one thing I had to know, and I'm going to find out. Yes, you can get a Klondike bar in the Klondike. Now I have something to keep in my freezer. A few miles east of town, I met a familiar foe. Deja vu. The construction site again. Or road repair, I guess that's what you call it. But for me it was road despair when I first came up. Let's see how good it is on the way back. At least it's not raining. But I hope they made some progress. Surely it couldn't be worse. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please check out my other adventures as well.